Hey everybody, welcome to the Difference Makers podcast. My name is Pastor Tyler Warner from Calvary Chapel, Trussville, and we are here on BGTV Studios. Glad to be here as always. We're going to be talking today about goals. We're going to talk about setting goals and then breaking them down and how to go from there. Most of us are pretty good at deciding where we're going, but figuring out how to get there can be a little more difficult, so we're going to talk about that. Before we do that, though, I want to remind you about ironworks.media. Ironworks.media is a ministry of Calvary Chapel, Trussville. We are building the premier online platform for Christian resources. BGTV is a big help in that process. We're very grateful for it. We've got books there. We got a few here that you can look out, and actually got two more. They're going to be coming out this year, good Lord willing. But we've also got videos that we release every single week. We've got another podcast you can check out. We've got some conferences that we've done that you can go see all of them. Every session is right there. We got another one coming up in May, actually. Or no, we moved it to June. It's coming up in June, so you can check out that one. Lots of resources there for free, except for some of the books that you can download to help you stay sharp and stay strong. If you join our mailing list on ironworks.media, we've got 2 free ebooks for you, so you can get a little taste of what we're talking about. And if you want more information about the church, you can go to calvarychapeltrussville.com. Breaking down your goals. That's what we're talking about today. Breaking down your goals. Today's podcast is right along with other things that we talk about here on Difference Makers. We're talking about, as always, motivation and inspiration to live the life that God has called you to live. We know from the Word of God, 1 Corinthians 7:17, Ephesians 2:10, and elsewhere, that the Lord has a will for your life. He has a plan and a purpose, something He has called you to do. And some of those things are very specific, like He's called me to be a pastor, and some of them are more general, like I'm also a father, I'm also a husband, I'm a citizen of this country and of this community, I'm a man of God, I'm a Christian. There are responsibilities that come along with those things that we're trying to inspire and motivate you to do. And the reason I'm doing that is because a lot of these things that we get when we need motivation or we need instruction or we need somebody to help us along, we go to the world to get those things. And that's not all bad, but it sure can be. There's an awful lot of evolutionary theory that goes into that, trying to explain that the reason your brain works this way is because you used to be a seal or a monkey or whatever it is. And there's also a lot of it that just comes from a straight up carnal, sinful perspective that tells you the most important thing is getting money and getting girls and whatever it is, and leave the rest of that stuff behind and get religion when you're older if you must. Well, I'm not interested in any of that. I want to know what God has to say. But we're also going to give you a lot of real practical advice and instruction, and that's what I hope we'll have for us today. Because we are not sluggards in the calling God has given us. We talked about this a few weeks ago on Difference Makers, about that word that you see in Proverbs, sluggards. To be a sluggardly person, a person who is like a slug in the way that they live their life. And when it comes to the calling of God and the abundant life that Jesus has called us to be, you cannot be a sluggard. You cannot be a lazy person. The Bible even tells us not to be slothful in zeal, but to be fervent in spirit as you serve the Lord. That you are called to be passionate and to awaken that joy and that fire in your heart to go after the life that God has given you. Not necessarily just ministry and church, but every aspect of your life. And you have to realize this. You might know very well what your calling is, but life does not just happen. Life does not just progress forward. Life does not just become what you want it to be. You're not just going to sit around and one day that woman is just going to plop right in front of you. You're going to get married. It's not going to be a problem. You're going to have your kids. You're going to have a big house. Life doesn't just happen that way. This is sometimes a lesson that young folks need to learn when they first graduate and as they first start to really live their life. You're not going to have the life that your mom and dad have now in their 40s or 50s or whatever, right now in your early 20s. You have to build that. And the same thing is true in your walk with Jesus. The Lord empowers us by His Holy Spirit, but if you look at the Word, there's always a time of preparation. There's always a day of small things. Moses spent 40 years in the wilderness. Paul spent 14, maybe even 17 years, depending on how you calculate it, in the wilderness, in Tarsus, doing nothing really that the Bible records until Barnabas called him back to Antioch. Even the apostles themselves spent 3 years with Jesus. There's seasons, there's small times, and you're supposed to push through those things. The book of Zechariah, Haggai, Ezra, Nehemiah are awesome on this subject. The point is, some people believe that if they work hard, if they pursue their life, they give it everything they've got, they fire up their ambition and they pursue life, that somehow that's a lack of faith. that God is the one that's supposed to do these things, that God is supposed to just bring these things about in my life. Now, that is true. I will always stand here and say that if you serve the Lord, he will bring blessings into your life. And not only that, God will bring blessings into your life just because he loves you, just because he's gracious, and even if you haven't done everything you're called to do. However, I think that is a false opposition, because if you look at what the Bible tells us, it gives us the examples of living a joyous, godly life with fire, with energy, with organization and planning, and with hard work and labor even. Paul even referred to his ministry as a labor that he had to do. And he's not just being metaphorical there. I can tell you right now, ministry is work, and it is in fact hard work. The Bible says the workman is worthy of his hire. Paul said in 1 Corinthians 9, he disciplines his body and keeps it under control to obey Christ. So it is not anti-Christian to work hard and take all that fire and drive that I know you have and apply it to the life that God has called you to live. God does not approve of people that just sit back and do nothing. He approves of those that step out in faith. Now, sometimes stepping out in faith means waiting, but that's not what we're talking about today. We're talking today about laying hold of the things that God has promised you and has called you to do, setting goals and then how to achieve them. And I use this word goal. This is one of my favorite words. I'm just going to tell you. I know some people are a little uncomfortable with that and it feels cheesy to them or it feels worldly. That has not been the way my life has gone. I love setting targets for myself and chasing them down as best I can. That's why I loved football and baseball so much. It was very obvious what we were all trying to do. The rules were very plain. How you got better were plain. And that was good for me. I loved that. I don't like walking around nebulous because it's very difficult to progress. And that, of course, this whole process should be done in prayer. We should assume this on everything that we ever talk about here, that you are doing it in tandem with the Holy Spirit in prayer, in the study of God's word, that you are going to set these goals with God's word in mind. So you've got to set them though. You've got to set a target. You've got to plant a flag that you're going to then chase and capture. You can call them goals, call them targets, call them dreams, visions, whatever you want. Chasing those things down is so important. Now, these can range in various ways. Some of these goals are going to be very broad and very difficult to lay hold of. For example, Paul says that he does everything that he does that by any means possible I might attain to the resurrection from the dead. And I would say that's the ultimate goal of every man and every woman on earth, is to live forever, to live past this life. But of course, how do you do that? You can't really break it down and say, okay, I'm going to go to church this many times and I'm going to do this many mission trips and tithe this much money. Well, that's legalism. However, it is still a good goal. Saying something like, I want to have a great marriage is an awesome goal to set for yourself. You can maybe break it down some, but even those are going to be a little broader. To love my wife like Christ loved the church. That's an amazing goal for you to have. Or for you're a wife, I'm going to submit to my husband as unto the Lord in all things. That's an outstanding goal for you to have. However, it's very difficult to measure that, you see. I'm just saying some of these things are big, and I would say the farther out your goal is, the more broad it will be. Some of it is going to be very, very specific, and those are my favorite. If you're looking at your business and say, we need to make X amount of dollars in sales this year, that's a goal. You stick it on the wall, you stick it on the mirror, you put it in your wallet, whatever, and say, this is what we're doing, and this is what we're chasing down. Why do we do things like this? Well, because otherwise it gets very, very stressful. I'll tell you that if I wake up at the beginning of the day and I show into work and I don't have a to-do list, then I am very, very stressed out about that day. Even if I know that there's really nothing going on, there's no big project, there's no looming deadline. However, I don't know that for sure because I haven't taken the time to set it out. And your life can be that way as well. Isn't it stressful when you're working at a job that you don't intend to stay at, but you don't know what to do? You don't know where you're going next. It's not that you wouldn't do it if you knew. It's just that you don't know. That's why taking the time to set targets and set goals is so important. If you say, I don't really like the way that my body is growing, I don't feel like it's healthy, I feel like I might be committing the sin of gluttony, and I want to get better, I want to get in shape. All right, well, what are you going to do though? That's a target, that's an idea, that's a dream, but have you made a goal such as, I'm going to go to the gym 3 days a week for the next 6 months, or I'm going to lose 40 pounds, or whatever it might be, I'm going to run a mile every day. Those things are better because they focus you. And you're not going to become bitter. You're not going to become angry at life and start blaming everybody else. Because this is the other thing that comes in, is if you don't have a purpose, you've not set yourself a target to chase down, and therefore you're not progressing towards any kind of target or any kind of goal, you start to get mad at the world. It's my husband's fault. It's God's fault. It's society's fault. It's the government's fault, whatever it might be. And that's not good. I don't want that for you. Neither does the Lord. So you've got to start setting goals so that you know where you're going. It's kind of like in Alice in Wonderland, where she said, can you give me directions? And he goes, well, that all depends where you want to go. And she goes, well, I guess it really doesn't matter. And he said, then it doesn't matter which way you go. And of course, the whole purpose of that is she needed to figure out what she wanted. That movie is all about, little rabbit trail here, but that movie is all about, what if there was a world with no rules at all? And it's not a very pleasant place to be. Neither is your life if you don't have a target or you haven't set some goals for yourself. So I want you to think about your life. What have you been called to do? What is your dream? What is your purpose? And for some of you, this is very obvious. You're in medical school. You're going to be a doctor. You're writing. You want to finish that book. You've got some kids. You want to be a good father or a good mother to them. You know, you planted a church, you know what your goals and your targets would be. But you need to set them down, you need to write them down, you need to come up with these things. So that way you know what you're chasing down. And I will encourage you to set big goals, to set some big ones. Jerry Falwell in Lynchburg, Virginia, he stole this from somebody, but I'll give him credit because I heard it from him first. He always used to talk about having a BHAG, a big, hairy, audacious goal. Why do we set big ones? Because it's got to be big enough to excite you and motivate you. You know, if you're a quarterback and you show up and say, well, this year, I would like to have a winning season, and I would like to complete at least 50% of my passes. Those are two very achievable goals, but they're not going to excite anybody. They're not going to fire up any GM to bring you on. They're not going to get those unruly skill players to follow you. But you showing up and saying, we're winning a Super Bowl this year, and heck, we're going to win 2 Super Bowls in a row starting right now. That's something that people can get behind. You see this during presidential elections where somebody comes out and they say something very nice and very reasonable, and they say, well, what we'd like to do is we'd like to lower the deficit by a few $1 million, and we want to make sure that the programs we have are restored. And I would also like to take a look at some of our policies, and you hear that, and this guy doesn't know what he's doing. It might all be good stuff, but somebody who comes along and they say, no offense to whoever doesn't like this, but they say, we're going to make America great again. What is that? That's a big goal that everybody can lay hold of. For Obama, it was hope and change we can believe in. It's a big idea. It's a big goal. And critics might say, but it doesn't mean anything. It doesn't matter. He is articulating a powerful, big idea. And so taking this out of the realm of politics, it's not really political, it's just an illustration. For you, are you setting goals for yourself that are going to excite you? You have so much more ability than you think. And especially once you start breaking down goals like we're going to talk about, and you start chasing every individual one day by day, you'll be amazed at how far you get to go, all right? So we're setting goals. We've set some targets about what we want to do. And now we're going to think, okay, where in my life do I need to be working on these things? Maybe you got some big targets for your life. We're going to spread it down, first of all, to the different domains of life in which you exist. And the way I do this, there's 10 different ways I look at that, and you can divide these up however you like. But I'll say the first one is your spiritual life. Are you setting spiritual goals for yourself? We talked about, the resurrection from the dead. I want to serve Jesus. I want to follow God all the days of my life. Okay, well, let's look at some things a little more practical. Are you wanting to read your Bible every day? Are you wanting to pray for 30 minutes every day? That's a very good, reasonable, and yet still pretty challenging goal right there. Maybe you've got something like, I want to go on a missions trip to this country. I want to be able to tithe this much money. I want to be able to, whatever it might be, memorize Bible verses or share the gospel with this many people or lay hands on this many people to pray the prayer of faith for them to be saved. So where in your spiritual life? How about your physical life? I'm talking now about taking care of your body, being in shape. I think so many Christians, because we don't want to be carnal and vain about our bodies, we indulge ourselves in the sin of what the Bible calls gluttony, which is not good. You need to be able to be looking after yourself so that you can not be a financial burden on your family later, and so that you yourself can have the energy that you need to go about your life. And it's also a really good way to prevent yourself from slipping downward into some negative headspace that God doesn't want you to live in. Your personal life. Things like your relationships. And as I would say, even your goals themselves can go under your personal life. How are you going to treat your family? We set a goal one time in my family where we were going to be having dinner together every night for a week. We say every night this week we're having dinner, and then we spread it out. Okay, it's baseball season. It's a little harder. We're going to sit down at the table to eat dinner at least 2 nights a week. Now it's summertime. Now we're going to try to do it 5 nights a week. And that way we're not doing it all the time, and sometimes we missed our target, but it's keeping us together. That's a great example of something that maybe your goal is to be a close-knit family. Well, you can't just say, we're going to be close-knit 5 days a week. You add something in there like, we're going to have dinner together. We're going to go on vacation together. We're going to talk about each other's day. That's the kind of thing. Look at your professional life there. Your professional life is pretty obvious to set targets for this one. In fact, very often they're set for you. But you should be thinking bigger than that. Do you want to get a promotion? Do you want to start your own business? Do you want to be the manager of the branch where you are? Do you want to redo the way something is done? Do you want to win an award? I don't know what it is. That's your professional life. So you should look into that. Your financial life. I got to go faster on some of these as I look at the clock here. But your financial life. Do you want to pay off your debt? Do you want to make a little bit more money? Do you want to get a side hustle that can supplement your income so that way you're not taking too much away from the big dream, but it's just helping out a little bit? You know, maybe you're a mother and your kids are starting to get out of the house and go to school a little more. Do you want to start contributing that way with your family like a Proverbs 31 woman should? I don't know what it could be. I put in here your domestic life. That applies to your house. You know, it's really, I guess maybe not the best word for that, but it's the one I use. So I look at my house. You know, the chores have got to be done. The house has got to be clean. I just had to rehang a gate on my backyard because we had that big windstorm and it ripped it right off the hinges. So, you know, things like that got to be done. If you want to have a nice place to live in, is that something that you want? Do you want to be able to have people over anytime? Well, you got to set some goals about how often you're gonna clean. You can go down to your creative life. If you love to draw, if you love to write, if you love to take photographs, whatever that may be, are you setting goals for that? Or do you just say, well, I want to write more this year? Well, how much? Do you want to write a whole book? Do you want to publish a short story? Do you want to do 5,000 words a week? Whatever it may be. Set some targets and some goals for yourself. Your educational life. If you're in school, I mean, getting good grades is a pretty good one to have. But once you get past that, what about, do you want to read about history? Do you want to read up on some good theology? Do you want to learn Greek? Do you want to learn Spanish? Is there something that you want to know and learn? Set some targets on that. Because I'll tell you what, Duolingo will sit there on your phone all day. And if you don't set some kind of plan, it's not going to help you. It's just going to sit there. And now they make the face droop on the app cover and everything. And that's a really pushy owl. I'll just put it that way. So that was created in educational. Recreation. Put recreational goals in there. That's okay. You know, if you enjoy reading, maybe you feel like you just read the same books over and over again. You got a growing stack of books that you never read, and so you're kind of getting, frustrated with it. Set a goal. I'm going to read a new book before I read a one that I've already read. I'm going to read 3 new ones before I read another one, or 2 new ones before I buy another one, whatever it may be. Set goals to go outside more. I set goals like this all the time. We're going camping this year. Right? That's a target that we're setting for ourselves. Or I'm going to hike this many times, or whatever it is that you like to do. If you like to fish, if you like to hunt, if you like to whatever it may be. Video games. You can set goals for all these different things. And then I think that's all 9. If I've forgotten one, I'm just going to have to do it next time, I guess. But I'd say number 10 is the public life. And I include this one because I think there's a responsibility upon me as a voter and as a citizen to be informed about local issues, not just the big ones you read about on the news, but local issues, local matters, find out how I can be contributing as a representative of Christ in the public sphere. That's something to consider as well. So for me, that was something like increase my participation in our local pregnancy center. And that's something that I did and I'm experiencing right now. Look at every aspect of your life. So that was a little longer than I intended, but we're setting goals. We're setting targets. Here's what you do next. Break them down. Most of these things are going to be far out in the future. You're going to be all the way out in the. I like to make goals that are many years away, like 7. I'm 33 now, so I'm setting 7-year goals for when I turn 40. Good milestone for me. And then break it down to just a couple years. Okay, so in about 3, when I'm about halfway there, where do I want to be? And then break it down from there in 1 year, because that's a very reasonable target to shoot for. And then I even go by the month and by the week, and sometimes even by the day. Here's what I'm going to do to get there. Now, if you're already in some of these domains, if you already work that job, you kind of know what you need to do. It's easier for you to break it down. For other things, you're not really going to know what to do. You might say, okay, I want to learn how to play the trombone. I don't know anything about it, but I love jazz and I think it'd be a lot of fun. All right, well, you got to start setting some goals now that'll get you to the big one. If your big goal is to play in a jazz concert somewhere in 10 years from now, All right, start researching what kind of instrument you ought to buy. You start looking at how to practice. Are there online courses that I can do? Is there a local group to find? Should I, buy this instrument or save it for the other one? And you add that as part of your goals. By 6 months from now, I will have done all my research and I will be prepared. I will have saved up enough money to make that purchase and begin that. I used to play trombone in middle school. That's why I'm using that as an illustration. But you break it down all the way. When we were planning the church, the big goal was plant a church in Trussville, Alabama. Okay, so that means 1 year from now, we need to be having our first service. We're having our first service there. That means we need to find a location. So by what date do I need to do that? I need to get the word out to people. So when am I going to do that? I need to resign from this job. How much time is my boss going to need? I've got to do some reading and some planning. I've got to recruit some people to come and be part of the team. I've got to get some Bible studies prepared. I got to think about websites. I've got to think about legal, administrative matters. And once you've done all that research, now you start putting them in the plan and you go, okay, how fast can I get this done? How do I need more time than initially anticipated, or do I need to just work harder? Find out what you need. Do you need experience? Do you need education? And when you do this, all of a sudden these things become really doable. It becomes impossible to say, I'm going to lose 50 pounds. But you know what becomes very doable? Find out which gym I'm going to go to and which workout program I'm going to follow. I can finish that by the end of this week. Boom, now we know where we're going. Okay, what's next? I don't have anything to wear. Okay. Also, this week, I'm going to get all the stuff that I need to wear. And then the next week, I'm going to show up for the first time. Just maybe if you're going slow, you just start with that. I will show up for the first time and give it a try. Now that I've done that, okay, I'm going to go back again. I'm going to figure out the best time to go. Breaking it down all the way. And you do that for years, you'll be amazed at the progress that you make. I was telling you all the things that we just had to do planning the church. It's been 6.5 years. And here I am on BGTV. That didn't happen all at once. That happened little by little, Sunday after Sunday, phone call after phone call, long trip from Virginia, all that. It all had to come together, and it's the same thing that you've got to do, all right? Now, here's the last thing that I'll add to this before we start to conclude it, which is you've got to find a way to quantify your goals. Quantify means to attach a number and measure it, all right? Now, I'll say right off the bat, this is not always going to be possible. I want to love my wife more this year. You can't really put a score on that. You don't want to come to your wife like, all right, would you say that today from 1 to 5, 1 being I didn't love you at all, 2 being I loved you a little but not very much, 3 a medium amount of love. 4, you see what I'm saying? You can't do that because that's just, that's going to be undermining that goal in the first place. But you need to find a way as much as you can to quantify it so that you know when you're getting there or not. You might say, to be a great trombone player. You don't look at every day and say, was I a great trombone player today? You say, did I practice today? Was it a good practice? Did I practice? How long was it? How often did I accomplish all the targets that I wanted to set? Well, I need to really join a group if I'm going to do that. Okay, did we look into finding a group? Have we hit the target? When can we actually check it off? If you're making your to-do list and your goals list full of things that you never really know when you've done it, then, there's a problem with that. This is why we like things like doing it for a certain amount of time or doing a certain number of minutes. Like if I'm going to be writing, I'm going to write this many words. If I'm recording a podcast, I'm going to record this many episodes today. So, when I'm doing a sermon for the week, I have targets that I hit every single day. So Mondays, I'm going to outline for Wednesday, and I'm going to read all the commentaries that I need to read. Tuesday, I'm going to put my notes together and have the first form of it finished. Wednesday, I'm going to review it, edit it, and pray over it, and then present it. That's how I do a midweek service. I know when I have accomplished each one of those goals. And it should be the same thing for your whole life. Once you've broken it down, it becomes very, very manageable. And I'd say, again, the farther out it gets, the harder it is to do that. But you need to be able to set things. You've heard of SMART goals, maybe, which is specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. Yeah, look into things like that so that you can know when it's been finished. Spiritual things are particularly tough here. When am I a true disciple of Christ? Was I a disciple? How many days this week was I a disciple? Oh, that doesn't really work. We don't want to be carnal with the things of God. But you know what you can do? I'll give you something here. This is called a process goal, which is different from a target goal. A process goal is when I'm going to work this process every day. So if I want to become a purely sanctified Christian, difficult to measure that. You know what you could measure is, am I doing my Bible reading and prayer every day? Am I evangelizing once a week? And that can all drift into legalism, but some of us, legalism is not our problem. Being a sluggard is our problem, and we've got to learn how to measure and work on those things. And what's great about setting goals and setting targets is that they shouldn't be a burden on your back. You want them to provide you some accountability, but you only have these things to, in essence, grade yourself. And if you miss it, well, you missed it. You get back up and you keep on going. If it's something very serious, that is a signal to you that you're putting it off. And if it's something that's not that serious, it's just a reminder that, okay, if I want to progress in the things I've said I want to do, I'm going to have to do more than that. It's a way of checking it. We say as a board, when we have our budget meetings as a board at our church, that we're not setting the budget in order to be slaves to it, but so that it can serve us. So that if the Lord calls us to spend more than we intended, we can do that, but at least we know that we're spending more than we had originally planned. So it's not to bind you, it's to guide you and grade you and just provide you some checkpoints so that you know if you're progressing. And at times, there will be days when you feel like you're just spinning your wheels, like you're not moving forward at all. And maybe that's true. Maybe you need to step back and reevaluate. Make that a target for the day, is evaluate if the current system is a good one. But it also might not be. It might be that you're working the system and you're accomplishing things and you don't see motion, but that's because it still takes time. I have found that once you start, the motion is good for you. If you try anything brand new, you're going to be bad at it. My son hates learning a new sport because when he first starts, he's no good and he wants to win. But I have to teach him, you're going to be bad at it until you're good at it. But progressing and trying is awesome. Don't waste all your time trying to find the perfect workout program. Just go do something. Just go in there and pick something up or run or jump or do something. In your spiritual life, don't waste all your time trying to find the perfect, Bible reading plan. Just open the book and read the book. Still find a plan, but don't let it stop you, because motion will move you forward. Inertia works in your favor here. And I had one other point in here, which is about celebrating your wins and your progress. Maybe we'll talk about that another day, running out of time now. But you got to be able to celebrate those wins when they come. And yet, if you never have a target, you never have a goal, you've never broken it down, then you'll never know if there's anything to celebrate, and that'll bum you out. And if you only have big picture goals and you haven't broken them down, then that celebration can seem so far off that today doesn't feel like it's worth anything, and that's no good. Thank you for listening to Difference Makers today. My name is Pastor Tyler Warner from Calvary Chapel, Trussville. I want to remind you one more time about ironworks.media. This is our platform that we're building at Calvary Chapel, Trussville to be the premier Christian resource network, books, podcasts, all sorts of things for you to check out. There's 2 free ebooks for you if you join our mailing list, and if you want to find out more about the church, go to calvarychapeltrussville.com. Man, I feel like I was speaking a million miles an hour today, but a lot of good stuff in there. So go set some goals, go break them down, get out there and go make a difference, friend.